Hello, everybody. I'm Fork Poppy. I'm joined with Secular Sam. We're just going to be doing our first video, going over our Moto Weekly Value Vintage that we played yesterday, going through some of the deck lists, and then commentating our matches. So thank you for joining me, Sam.
Yeah, of course.
So, given that you got first place there, I suppose we should probably start with your list.
Yeah, so if we take a look at what I played, I've been on Eldrazi Post the past several weeks practicing for SEG Richmond, which is coming up in March, the beginning of March, for their 1K event. So the core of the deck mostly revolves around, obviously, Cloud Post is the namesake of kind of the whole branch of all of these decks. You're playing 4 posts, 4 Glimmer Posts, and 4 Trench Posts. A lot of the other post decks don't have I think a fast way to get out their post lands. Mono Blue plays Expedition Map, but the thing that's really nice about Eldrazi Post really is sowing Myco Spawn. For 4 mana, you essentially are getting any of your post lands that you need when you need them, with the added benefit of if you have the extra 2 mana, you get to exile one of your opponent's lands, which in the mirror match of any other posts, not that I've played a ton, it comes in super clutch. You get to exile their Cloud Post, or in the case of like Mono Blue Post, I can take out their Academy Ruins so that they don't Mindslaver lock me. I'm either just attacking them with big Eldrazi monsters. We've got Devourer of Destiny to sculpt the hand, and exile stuff whenever I have the mana to actually play it. Breaker of Creation helps me gain some life back. Glimmer Post also helps with. Glaring Flesh Raker is another line for winning, because this version of Post plays the spheres, the stars, and a lot of the 1 mana artifacts. So with the one of Restricted Mystic Forge, I'm just playing off the top of my deck, making a whole bunch of spawns, sacking them to keep playing things off the top of my deck. And then the other attack angle, besides exiling lands with Myco Spawn and World Breaker, is Trench Post. So yeah, that's pretty much this deck list. The recent changes that I've made: before I was running just 6 forests and 2 Layer of the Hydras. I've been trying out the 1 of Scavenger Grounds and the 2 of Hashep Oasis. So just a little bit of extra, graveyard removal, because I was also running 3 Soul Guide Lanterns before. So I cut one of those for a Vexing Bauble to try and help with all the Cascade Rhinos decks. If I happen to have it in my opening hand, that kind of just hoses them game 1.
Yeah, it looks like you got a little bit of room to budget to play with right now, but I know things always fluctuate.
Yeah, I would say with this deck, it varies from day to day. Usually the cards that are doing the most moving are Sowing Myco Spawn and Devourer of Destiny. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that I am running 2 main deck Warping Whales to help with like Cascade, because all the Cascade spells that they cascade into are sorceries, so I can counter those potentially.
And we have seen that removal mode is relevant as well. There's a lot of decks running around like that. Is it looting deck? You've got the Desperate Plea deck you play against, Infect, that all tries to combo off starting with the 1 power toughness creature.
Yeah. So I guess from there, we'll move over to, it looks like our second place list was Selesnya Convoke on Lucario's deck.
Yeah, great brewer, and he's been playing with this list for a long time. This is the first time I've gotten to see it in action, and he got the 3-0. That was really impressive. So this is all built around Falahi Wayfarer. You play a lot of hybrid mana creatures. They're all technically base green or white. Falahi Wayfarer gives all the spells from your hand Convoke. So you play a couple ways to pick up extra cards, stuff like your Knight Errant of Eos, you've got your Pawn Prophet, and your Gallant Citizen that cantrip. And then you're able to pay for whatever spells you draw just by tapping these creatures that are multiple different colors from your hand. So it can be a bit of an aggro deck. It can have some sort of storm turns. I've seen our friend Pizza played against the other player who was playing a similar list, and I got to see easily 40 power hit the board in 1 turn.
For their non-creature spells, it looks like we're playing Incubation Incongruity, probably to just find some creatures off the top, and maybe a sometimes relevant removal spell. Oust, another removal spell. And Case of the Gateway Express seems pretty good in a deck that's just trying to, put out all their creatures onto the field at once.
Oh yeah, we didn't touch on him. Hero of Precinct 1 is the other incentive to be in this combination, to be casting all multicolored spells. That's what enables it to go so wide so fast.
Yeah, because every time you cast a creature, you just make another thing that you can use to convoke.
Extra value to go with it. And this has got a lot of similar things going on. They did try to focus a little bit on that red splash, trying the new Catharsis, trying some Figure of Destinies. And the other different spice that I saw in this one was the Sky Hussar. And we got to talk about that choice a little bit. So I think that's certainly something that's worth testing. Tam is new sort of Mother of Runes effect. I find it a little slow, but I haven't seen it in action yet.
Oh, okay. Each other creature you control has hexproof from each of its colors. So if you make your thing all colors, it can't be targeted. Interesting. And then Thalia is just good against the spells decks.
Your High Tides, your Channel Mirrors, or like a controlling deck still. It's one of those things that they have to trade 1-for-1 on.
Next up, we were going to cover the red deck wins from Capybara Help Desk.
So Ectobiologist and I also did a lot of labbing on this list. We played a few different practice matches going into the event, talked about some flex slots. There was some cards I was sketchier on, like the Vexing Devil, that apparently played really well. And obviously, this one undefeated. It is a really fast deck. Being able to take a classic, red deck wins core with some things that give you a little bit of reach, like your Broadside Bombardiers, your Fury. I think we're going to be seeing so much more Fury these days. It looks like it is ticking back up in price a little bit. When we played this event, Furies were 33 cents a piece. And they are rising slightly, but 47 is still easily a point where it'll be a staple of this format. They're ready for the creature matchups. Roiling Vortex was a suggestion for me because he was doing Soulless Jailers for his answer to Cascade, but he was also playing things like Riftbolt, Amped Raptor, things that didn't really synergize with it. But he's also trying to be the faster deck. So Roiling Vortex says, okay, maybe you can cast Rhinos, but it's going to shoot you for 5. And if I have 2 more burn spells after that, that'll bridge the gap before you can even swing with your Rhinos.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, there is some life gain as well that these decks need to worry about. Stuff like Ally.
I don't know. I feel like I'd almost want to run more than one Roiling Vortex, but at 123, might be a little strained budget-wise.
Definitely. As you see, we got 3 Disruptor Flutes at their current prices. He got the full play set of Broadsides. The base core of this deck is so cheap that you can pick 2, 3, even 4 cards that would generally be considered too expensive for a lot of value vintage decks and play 3 or 4 of them.
And then next up, we have your deck.
So I went 2-1, depending on the breakers, either on 5th, 12th, who knows. But I decided to bring Living in this week. I've been playing Ally, I've been playing Is It Looting. Done okay with both. This is probably my favorite Cascade deck, despite it being probably objectively on the weaker side. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it, but the gist is to throw a lot of creatures in your graveyard, a lot of creatures with cycling, land cycling, evoke. Your creatures are going to go straight to your graveyard, then you're going to cast a Shardless Agent or a Violent Outburst into your living end to wipe your opponent's board and bring back all those dudes that you threw in the yard straight into play, try to kill them the turn after. I think with the land cyclers, it's really easy to support going fully 4-color. A lot of builds are just going to be Teamer. Maybe they still play the Griefs, but they don't play Trolls. Now we have a larger influx of Jundlists that are going for, cutting out the blue, the Shardless Agent entirely. The budget in this deck is getting a little tighter, though. Griefs are raising in price. Living End is raising in price. Troll is also not the cheapest. Only got to play 3 Griefs in this event. Generous End also is on the more expensive side, so I went down to 1 Generous End. I could easily play up to 4 if the budget allowed it. And yeah, since yesterday, you see my list has raised above $30. You get to be a little bit more interactive than your all-in Cascade decks like Hypergenesis through your Griefs. I've got 2 of Runescale Stormbrood, which has been performing really well in Rhinos as well. Being able to have a counterspell when you're holding up Dismana to cycle anyways, or it's a red card to pitch to Fury. In my sideboard, I've got the juke of cascading into Crashing Footfalls instead of Living End, which some people have tried back in Modern. I don't see it much in this format. We did have 2 other Living End players in this event, and one of them pivoted to Hypergenesis. But I think Footfalls is still just such a fast clock. The same kind of interaction will not work against it. It's really fun to be able to switch between games 2 and 3. Even if they quote-unquote expected or are ready for it, you could always switch back. It could still, just convert, frankly. Sometimes you can force one early, even if you know it's going to get interacted with, just to try to clear the way for the next one.
Yeah, I would say if you're ever in an event and you see Living End, just keep it in the back of your mind that there is a possibility that they have Crashing Footfalls as a...
Or Hypergenesis
as a backup plan.
Yeah, Graveyard Hate isn't always going to be all it takes.
And then the last deck we have is Pizza Ma's Abs and Cocoa list.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pizza Ma is a good friend of mine. He will probably be helping out with the channel, but he couldn't make it for today's recording. But we still wanted to give him some credit. He also went 2-1, obviously built around Collected Company. Try to play a really large density of creatures, combinations of which can basically win the game on the spot. You've got your Amalia with Wild Growth Walker, your Pioneer combo. Got to see that in action. It can convert, definitely. Then you've got Cauldron Familiar, Samwise Gamgee, and a Sack Outlet. He's got 4 Viscera Seer, but also the one of Miser's Umbral Collar Zealot. Then yeah, beyond that, he's just got a little bit of acceleration, a little life gain. Grist is a really cool thing to collect a company into. Same for Unearth, because when it's not in play, it is a 3-drop creature. That's a good bit of interaction or a grindy engine.
Yeah.
And the mana base is pretty good for being 3-color and having a few cards that are a little bit more on the expensive side.
I definitely saw one game of his where he boarded in Scavenging Oozes, and that Scavenging Ooze was like had 9+1/+1 counters on it.
Yeah, he got to play against a Reanimator list, basically boarded out the entire Amalia combo in favor of every interactive piece he could. Your Scavenging Oozes went up to the full 4 Inquisition, Sea Priest, and just played a way grindier game. The Scavenging Ooze just outscaled it. It gained life. It became, able to block any creature in this format realistically beyond your Worldspine Worms.
And I think with that, we'll wrap up. A little shout out to the Shardless Agents blog. Santi's been doing a lot of work kind of compiling data and making this blog, look nice and searchable for people that want to get into Value Vintage. That comes with its own ELO tracker. And as of yesterday's tournament, Fork is at 5th place, and I myself am at 8th place.
All right, so we'll just start to get into our gameplay now. All right, so we're going to start this off with my round 1. I played against Movables, who was on Rakdos Goblins. I ended up doing a mull to 6. A decent hand. I started off with the Street Wraith there to see if I can find something to pitch to Grief while still cycling Architects, which luckily did work out. You definitely don't want a Living End stuck in hand. And these new brews of Goblins are pretty interesting. I saw we had 2 players in that event playing them. One ended up going 2-1, the other one. Have you been able to look at those lists yet, Sam?
I have not played against any Goblins lists, no.
They seem to have a pretty good core. Some games are a little slow. And I had 2 big misplays this game. It's my first match of the day. I missed my cycle on the Architects on the previous end step, and there's going to be another kind of egregious one later, but my play tightens up. I promise. So yeah, this is pretty standard gameplay stuff. The Grief was a big decision point. I decided to take the Skirk Prospector just so there was not as strong of an early game plan, and they can't just wipe their whole board into the Living End and get it all. But I left them with that 3-mana enchantment that is sort of a Blood Artist effect. It drains and gains for 1 whenever a goblin dies. And yeah, that was my other big mistake. Off that Waker of Waves, I needed to grab the Generous End to get a basic forest to be able to Violent Outburst and wipe the board now. Mm-hmm. Because I misclicked, took the Carabid, I'm just at the mercy of trying to find another red or green land off this cycle and my next draw for turn, which, as we will see, does not happen. So I pass it back over. He drops a second one of those. So now I'm dead either way. If I were to cast a Living End, that would be 10 goblins dying. That would drain me for 12. Or it would be 5 goblins dying, which would drain me for 10. But luckily, it never even comes to that because he casts this hilarious Goblin War Strike. Shoots me for lethal.
Wow.
So game 2, I go on the play. I believe I just ran back my sideboard exactly because I think Living End is good into Goblins. They're trying to play to the... If I just wipe their board, that looks pretty good. I kept an interesting hand for sure. Got some Street Wraiths, 3 of a kind Troll, and a Cascader. Cascade I probably can't cast until turn 4, but that's okay. I decided to run out the second basic swamp so that all my Tango lands can start to enter untapped. Goblin Guide, I'm seeing a lot of presence of now. How strong do you think that is these days?
I mean, it did good in Modern back in the heyday, so I don't see why it can't be good here. And I feel like budget-wise, since those formats aren't playing it anymore, giving your opponent lands, I think it's a
big downside. But some decks go pretty light on lands,
Yeah.
Sometimes that clock is enough where it doesn't matter. Living End is a really land light deck. I'm on 15 in the build I ran, but I think I could go lower.
Yeah.
Being able to get a few free cards off of Goblin Guide doesn't hurt. So yeah, as planned, we do just rip that turn for Shardless into Living End. Wipes the board. I do take 1 damage there. And I don't have them dead on board this turn. That had to be a sorcery speed one, but they end up not finding an answer. So for game 3, I think I could run it back. I decide to switch to Rhinos. And then, yep, there we see Leyline of the Void into Soul Guide. And now we're going to see, they just pass it back on turn 2. They didn't even have a second land. They kept 2 pieces of Grave Hate, greatly sacrificed the strength of the rest of their hand. on turn 3 they do have a threat, but hey, that just feeds me a land. Now we get to look at a few extra cards with our cyclers. I try not to overextend my cycling too much when I'm playing into Grave Hate, especially if I'm on Rhinos, because you can reach a point in Living End where you're hard casting things.
Which we definitely, I did saw in a different match that wasn't yours. The opponent had a whole bunch of Graveyard Hate out, and he was able to win by just casting his big monsters that he had in his hand.
If you keep a big hand just because or if you keep a bad hand just because it has that interaction, you're going to need to find something else. Otherwise, this can get there. And yeah, we just did instant speed violent outburst into footfalls. This turn we fought grocery speed agent into footfalls. Not a lot the opponent can do about it. They would have boarded in any. So we end up getting the there. And now we're into your round 1.
Yep. So my round 1 was against Hyde, who was on Eldrazi Aggro, which I found out as soon as he named Eldrazi on his unclaimed territory. Pretty long match 1 for this round. Just because, I mean, with post, a lot of my deck is just setting up and trying to get all of my lands out, which I kind of I'm able to do here. I did start off with a Cloud Post, which is always good to see in your opening hand.
You do have that Fleshbreaker engine going. You're picking up a few extra points of damage, a little bit of extra mana pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. And then I think we're actually probably going to see it this game 1. It might be coming up next turn or in the next 2 turns. Me playing World Breaker should be coming up.
That is a really strong piece of top end for sure.
Yep. It's just a card that a lot of decks have trouble dealing with, at least just stats wise. I mean, it's a 5/7, and we're going to see it. I think it might be this turn. Yep. So depending on what size your Moto screen is, it's kind of hard to read all of the text on World Breaker, and a lot of people will swing their flyers into World Breaker, not realizing that it has reach.
Yeah, we're used to our keywords at the top, but it's got a cast trigger and a characteristic change into void, so
yep.
No such luck.
Yeah, so...
And yeah, that Eldrazi Temple, that is a good main deck land to hit with World Breaker.
Yep.
And he drew heavy on lands, that didn't make a big difference, but... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there was a couple points in this where I exiled the wrong land. I definitely wasn't thinking. I don't know, thought the other ones looked fancier, and so my brain just automatically clicked those ones. But I'm like, oh wait, I should probably exiling the land that gives them more mana instead of
this Titan's Vanguard.
Yeah, Titan's Vanguard. I've seen a bunch of different flavors of Eldrazi aggro. Some are playing Titan's Vanguard, others are not. And here I'm kind of glad that he's attacking because I'm more than happy to trade World Breaker. I feel like they maybe should have kind of just taken out my Fleshbreaker.
I think there's a chance of that. And you cast the Warping Whale in case they do to get that 2 damage on the board. I think that makes sense.
Because I'm thinking, oh, they're going to take out my Fleshbreaker because otherwise I can just recur my World Breaker. But they're going to give me the chance to do just that.
Yeah.
You
look like he's a huge board. He's got big threats, but you look ahead.
Yeah. I'm making a bunch of dudes. All of that kind of on that block was just me utilizing all the mana that I had tapped. So that's why I did the trench post stuff during that point as well.
Yeah.
And so, I recurred World Breaker at the end of his turn. Just going to recast it. This was here. I should have hit his Eldrazi Temple.
But he's not sure for mana either way. You know?
I think the other thing my brain tends to do is, get the untapped mana. And that's probably what I did there instead of hitting the Eldrazi Temple.
Speed much. So he grabbed his Giganta there. That was quick. You get an O-Stone, which that's going to be a pretty good way to break parity. He's gone wide. He's down to smaller hand size. You're going to be able to get your case.
I would say that's the one maybe advantage that Mono Blue Cloud Post has over Eldrazi Post. I'm at the mercy of hitting my O-Stones from like Ancient Stirrings or off the top from Mystic Forge, whereas Mono Blue can just search it up with, Scour?
Yeah, Scour for scrap. And if you've already popped one, you can get that one back and search something different else out from your deck. That Scour for scrap is really strong.
Yeah, but I think with 4 Ancient Stirrings and Devourer of Destiny, like it's not super often that I'm, unable to dig and find an answer. Looking 5 cards deep is quite a bit of cards. So
Okay, so here, I want to point out, obviously this is not the line you take, but what you could have done is Devour, Exile Gigantha, and then you have exactly lethal, I think. Or no, you'd be 1 short. But I still think that may have been a good play.
no, Devourer would have dealt 1 point of damage from
Oh,
Glaring
so yeah, that
Fleshraker.
was lethal.
So
Yeah,
that would
there
have
we
been
go.
lethal. You are correct. I was just so focused on popping the O Stone that
Which is strong.
yep, I sometimes don't look for, lethal. So definitely something that I could probably do better at.
But also, yeah, your deck is meant to go long, right? You
Yep.
are, the longer this game goes on, you pull ahead further than your opponent.
Yep.
So it's not unreasonable at all. And that's an interesting trade to offer here.
At this point, I'm like, why hasn't this person conceded yet? And I'm,
Yeah.
just trying to end the game.
Makes sense.
So, but here, let's see.
I think you just fire off the Trench Post. Oh, you get your other World Breaker back. That's
Yep.
right. Yeah, this is one I could see going either way. You could rip the Breaker just for the card advantage. Ends up taking the block, obviously, as you have to, so...
Yeah, probably the one downside of Devourer of Destiny in the Eldrazi aggro matchup is that I can't exile any of their things because they are also devoid.
Yeah, it is pretty bad in the mirror. It's still that card selection early on, And Gigantha, that's 1 target, right? It's better than 0, but...
Yep, so for sideboard, I end up putting in 2 Spatial Contortions. I take out my Graveyard Hate because I don't really need that. And I usually tend to just board in Wayscape Battle Mage in most of my matchups because I just want to hedge my bets against any Dampening Spheres or Pithing Needles or anything like that, which I do believe...
Expected.
I think, yep, so there's a Soul Guide Lantern, which I wasn't expecting. I think since my opponent saw my World Breakers,
Yeah,
they did.
that was what ended up going coast to coast. They must have just really wanted to prevent that from recurring repeatedly.
Which I'm honestly happy to see. Like, if you're putting in cards to stop,
to slow down your own clock.
Yeah, a card that I only have 2 of, that makes me happy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, this is a pretty good mole here too. You got your mana engine online. You need to hit some more lands, but you have time to do that.
Yeah, anytime I see if I don't see any of my green lands, but I have post lands and my spheres, those give me green. So, which you'll see me probably do here. I tap my sphere for green, and I get out another post with Sowing Mycospawn.
Yeah, Mycospawn is so impressive.
Yeah, Mycospawn's really good, and the 2 mana to exile one of their lands. At this point, he's already set up with what he's gonna do. At that point, I just need to start ramping so that I can get stuff.
Stuff in 4 and 5 drops, But if you can survive for long enough, then as we said, once it gets to a grind, you win that matchup.
Right. And I was surprised with that attack. I thought he was going to attack with anything because I had done my math. I knew I had enough to play and activate O-Stone. So I was definitely expecting a bigger swing on that last attack. But thankfully, he was kind enough to only swing with 1 Eldrazi. So he'll get a card draw here.
When you're trying to play to the board like that, you can't always... Sometimes you have to just hope that they don't have it, right?
Yep.
He didn't want to manifest you having the O-Stone.
Right.
I understand that. Yeah, obviously not Hellbent there. He's still got 2 in hand, plus Gigantha. This game is not over yet.
No.
But you got a little bit of card selection. Got the ability to take out that temple.
Yep, learned my lesson from last game. Hit the Eldrazi temples.
Mm-hmm. And of course, they can still probably cast most things in their deck, especially with that next unclaimed territory. But I think it is still objectively right. I believe they just run out the Jeggy here.
Yeah. And I kind of mentioned this in my when I was streaming. I do not like the way that Moto does not put in the game log that they put Gigantha into their hand.
Yeah, it pops up on the stack, but so briefly.
Like I always see like a flicker of the screen and then tap mana, and so now I've kind of just associated that they must have been putting their companion in their hand.
And so that turn there, that brings up something I was curious about in your deck building. Would it ever be worth trying something like a Yavimaya instead of the Hush Up Oasis, just so you could use the second kicker on Wastegate Battle maybe a little bit more consistently?
You know, that honestly is not a bad call. And I think maybe instead of, because the reason the hash ups are there for more scavenger ground activations.
Oh, sure. Okay. The synergy is there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're also a desert. So I could maybe see potentially making another forest into a Yavimaya coast. Because I've had run into that where I have Wastegate Battle Mages in my hand, but I don't have any spheres to crack for blue if I want to bounce any of their stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I mean, you have your stars and your spheres, so it's not necessary, but it could be good. All right, now we're into my match two. I am playing against that Convoke multicolor list that we addressed. I'm on the play. They've got a Judge's Familiar right off the rip, so that means whenever I go to Cascade, I'm going to have to do it with at least one extra mana behind. We go for some land cycles. We go for a Grief. I'm looking at a Catharsis, a Falahi Wayfarer, Hero of Precinct 1. I decided to take the Hero to slow down their early game. They evoke their Catharsis. So that does mean that when I Living End, Catharsis is going to come back. Luckily, I found a pretty good answer to it in that Fury. So here, you know, he does have a little in hand are all lands. So I get to do a little bit of selection with the Waker. What I'm looking for here is a red card pitch to Fury, which I find with Violent Outbreak, and a fourth land, which I draw for turn. So here, what we get to do, we get to pitch cast our Fury. That way, when the Catharsis comes back from our Living End, I'm able to remove it an extra time. And then, of course, also just have a 3/3 double strike. Then we can Shardless Agent, cast our Living End. Naturally, it's only right to attempt to counter it, but I pay for it, so scoop it up. And I look at putting in the Rhinos here, but I decide not to. I do put in some Foundation Breakers because I am anticipating some level of graveyard hate. Something like a Rest in Peace from this list could be good, or even just Soul Guide Lanterns, you know. My opener here is a bit of a slower one. Drawing the red card, though, does make it better, where I have access to a turn 3 Cascade here with at least 2 threats. 2 threats doesn't always have to go coast to coast. Yeah, here's where we see that Sky Hussar. I decided to take the Falahi Wayfarer there because I'll have the ability to Fury it, and that just theoretically didn't give them a turn 3 play until they draw the next Falahi Wayfarer. Yeah, we pretty much do end up going for a pretty quick line here. We pitch cast that Fury, we go for our Living End. We didn't see any Grave Hate, luckily. So now we get a Thoughtseize, we get to Fury that Wayfarer out of the way, and we have pretty close to lethal in one turn. So our opponent goes for a cantrip creature, doesn't see the answer they need, and scoop it up, 2-0.
Nice. On to my round 2 against Jukemate. I won't spoil what he's on yet because this first game was one.
It was a big mystery.
Was one Inquisition, and then he spends the next 4 turns playing land go. And I'm like, what is this person on?
That's not what you expect from basic Swamp Inquisition. There's a lot of varieties of black aggro decks. The Luris variant, Death Shadow, Hogak that are really strong, really fast. And this deck is not that fast.
Yeah, and on the weekly tournaments, I feel like we usually see at least one Hogak. And so that's kind of just what I was assuming we were playing. Let's see, I get my Soul Ring out, which that
I wondered.
Yep, that was it was a misplay.
Backwards, yeah.
I mean, I could have played the Glaring Fleshraker and then played the Soul Ring, but I think I was on the Sowing Mycospawn line, so that's why I did it that way.
Mana. under you beforehand. And so then they do a Bone Shards. They discard that Somberwald.
Yeah.
It's a creature similar to Tristania's Summoner, where it's a 1/1, but it makes several tokens when it enters the battlefield. So did you kind of have it pegged what he was playing once you saw that?
Nope. I did not know about the card Desperate Plea, which is what this deck is trying to do. It's one of the new avatar cards that you can sacrifice a creature, and then you can reanimate a creature if it had the same power.
Yeah, it's really
And had I taken the time to look at the green card in his graveyard, I might have been able to piece it together. But
perhaps.
we'll see.
I think you do at some point, but
We
not
do.
too quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was
Yeah, I've seen some lists going around with Desperate Plea. I've been wanting to build around it, especially now that Persist is so cheap. That becomes your next best, or maybe even really best reanimation spell, where that's going to kill your one again. But then
Yeah.
you do have 8 good options.
Yeah, so I think that whole game one, he just didn't find any of his Desperate Pleas or cards to reanimate that Somberwald dude in his graveyard. So we'll
Couldn't
see.
finish getting going. He had a
Yep.
pretty fast clock.
I was so excited to see that he didn't have the turn 1 Inquisition to take my Soul Ring. But as we will see, I take the Myco spawn because I want to ramp. Because if I top deck a land, then I can turn to Myco spawn.
So yeah, he milled off the Stitcher Supplier, milled an Eye Twitch, which is a 1/1 that when it dies, it learns. Desperate Plea is a lesson, so he can grab that from the board for you. But he also milled his Tristani Summoner, which, as I mentioned, he's able to persist, which is going to kill it, so he can reanimate it again, but he keeps all those tokens. So now he's got a pretty wide board.
Yep. And this is where I finally realized what's going on. And in the middle of this match, I was sitting in just a random table by myself in the Value Vintage server, and he had popped in. And so we were laughing and having a good time. And I was like, oh, now I actually know what your deck is doing, because there's no way I'm coming back from this. I would have to had some cloud post lands in play and hope to rip an Oblivion Stone or something.
Basically, you didn't have your engine going.
Yeah.
He got there pretty quick. That was really good mills off the Stitcher Supplier.
Yeah, so now that I know what he's on, I instant sideboard in those Ratchet Bombs.
Exactly.
I tend to, in the aggro matchups, I cut down a little bit on my really big dudes and my Mystic Forge, so I can at least survive the early game.
The Ratchet Bombs are cool here. Obviously, they're going to wipe the board of all the tokens that those reanimate targets make, but if they haven't been able to get them down, pretty much everything that they use to sack the Desperate Plea and the rest of their threats are 1-drop. So it's just as reasonable to put it on 1.
Yeah. I dodged the turn 1 Inquisition. I was able to get my Soul Guide Lantern out. He took my Glaring Flesh Raker. I ripped a Cloud Post off the top, which is always nice.
Yeah. Now you can get a second Flesh Raker going.
Yep.
Start getting some triggers on it. And this is going to be hard for this deck to fight through a Soul Guide Lantern. They're basically just going to need enough time to force you to pop it and then try again.
Yeah,
and I don't think he ends up getting that time.
No, he got super unlucky with all of his Stitcher Suppliers. You can see over there, he's not milling any of his threats. So I can imagine they're either at the bottom or he's probably drawn some.
Which never feels good in your reanimator. And of course, he does have the Putrid Imp to discard. That is an interesting little inclusion.
Yeah.
You end up grabbing that Ratchet Bomb. And that in editing this match, that was where I was thinking about, Ratchet Bomb. Here, you can easily hold up the bomb on 0 in case he finds it. But if he doesn't, then you can just clear both of his threats.
Yep.
By going Ratchet Bomb on 1, and if he draws a Desperate Plea, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, so at this point, I think I'm sitting fairly pretty. I'm like, we were kind of joking around. I was like, yeah, sure, let me see if I can help you find some targets for your card. And still, he
does
finally finds one. Yep.
It's mastery. Goes for the persist on it, but obviously you have the Soul Guide.
Which, I mean, I think you have to. I almost, you might have missed it there. I almost misclicked and hit draw a card.
Yeah. And see, that was a decision point. I think you certainly could have ticked up your Ratchet Bomb there. I could see it either way. I know you're just staying teched and ready for those tokens, but with how low resource Droopmate is playing now, I think just getting those 2 blockers out of the way. Oh, no, there we go. That was why.
Yep.
Because you're able to blast them.
Yep. So
that makes sense. So
yeah,
he's able to get a Desperate Plea from the sideboard off the death of that Eye Twitch, as I mentioned. But he's going to need to find another creature to stack to it to make it happen. And even if he does, you have the Ratchet Palm online, so...
I do. And then, yep, he sees the land I have in my hand.
And the world's kind of your oyster here. You decide to go for a Myco Spot. That's going to do 2 damage. It's going to find you another land.
And I figure, you know what, might as well extra gravy. We'll get rid of some lands.
May as well. You don't have anything that cares about keeping those spawns in play, akin to like a Eldrazi line breaker.
Yeah, line breaker, or there's no It That Heralds the Ends to make them bigger. So they're essentially just chump blockers or mana.
All right, so this is our third match. We played against each other. We were both 2-0 at this point. Game 1 is going to be from my perspective. Game 2 from Sam's. Just to give you guys a little bit of variety. So you see, I kept a little bit of a risky hand. I am able to find my necessary land drops off of my land cycler here. I go basic forest off the generous and into the red-black duel off the troll. Will be close to perfect mana. But it's a bit of a slower hand. And then we see the natural main deck Soul Guide Lantern.
Yeah, hate to see it.
Hate to see it. So I put the Fury in my hand, and I decide I'm going to cast a Living End right now. I'm going to see if you want to spend the Soul Guide Lantern just to remove 1 Waker. And you do.
I do.
So I think maybe I'll be set when I find my second one.
Yep, so here I just play a Myco Spawn, get me another Cloud Post.
Yep. And you have a bit of time because I have not found my second Cascade spell here. And you've got the mana to start exiling lands.
Yeah,
that is the trouble with
if
mana base.
Yeah, exactly. I think if I remember correctly, I think I had 3 Sowing Myco Spawns in. I think I had 2 in my opening hand, and I ended up drawing another one.
Yeah, it was a blowout. Now, with all these land cyclers, you can support the 4-color mana base pretty decently, but once it gets interacted with, it's a little fragile. And so, yeah, it was the fact that it was a basic that you blew up. I could cycle for a blue source, but now it's going to enter tapped. And then you get to go to the other one, remove my red source that time. Same deal. I can grab a red source, but it's going to enter tapped. I thought I was going to be able to maybe start casting Fury, cleaning up your board. But with my red source getting removed, and then a second Soul Guide, meaning a Cascade spell was not going to be live, I had to skip it up. So I end up just cutting Living Ends for Footfalls, and I put in, I think, a couple of Foundation Breakers for my Waker of Waves.
Yep, I took a mulligan there, and then saw a natty double Cloud Post hand. I think I had knew beforehand that you had the transformational sideboard, so I'm fairly certain that I boarded in, I think, some more Warping Whales and Ratchet Bombs for the Rhino tokens.
Which, of course, there was no guarantee I was going to go for it, but between your Oathstones and your Soul Guides, you're kind of pre-boarded for Living End.
Yep. Let's see. So, yep, hit my Soul Guide Lantern. Not sure why I didn't play it.
I think you thought I was on Rhinos. That's respectable. I think you may have been holding up Warping Whale mana.
Oh,
now
I think
that
that is what, because I didn't want you to rune scale it, and so I think that's exactly why I hadn't played it yet.
Is what ends up happening here. I put a Shardless Agent on the stack, cast a Crashing Footfalls, which is a sorcery, so it gets Warping Wailed. But I was ready for that. I saw one get revealed off the Stirrings. I have my Stormbreed to counter it.
And I have another Warping Whale.
Until you have the second one.
Which I think is worth fighting over 8 power.
Absolutely, yeah. I think if it resolved, the rest of this game plays out really differently. Now, yet again, World Breaker, you're able to start my lands. Red Sword, something like Hardcast Furies would be a way for me to stabilize this game that I no longer have access to.
Yep. And to note, I could have potentially exiled the Shardless Agent, but I don't think I have enough pressure. I'd rather attack your mana base to try and keep you off of different colors from doing stuff.
I think that was absolutely right to do. Yeah, we see the Foundation Breaker, just destroys the Soul Ring, nothing really too relevant. And you don't technically have a lot of action at this time either.
Nope, and that's why I kind of pivot to, I had some life to play with, I figured I'd attack, see what you do.
Yeah. So you look ahead. Yeah, at this point, I'm hard casting Monstrous Carabids. I've only got 1 Footfall left in deck. I need to put some pressure on you ASAP because you're about to just start milling me.
Yep. And with me having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 posts out, that's 10 cards per turn.
And I see there that you mill over the 3rd footfall. So now even if I did hit a Cascade spell, it's basically text. Well, not exactly. We'll get to that. But yeah, you continue to put the pressure on. I see what you do in combat because I'm happy to trade anything with the Flesh Rake. But you're at 17. You got room to just let it through.
Yep. I was, expecting maybe a violent outburst or something, but we just see another carry added.
Yep. And another mill. So the game's got to end this turn for me, basically. Within the next turn cycle, I should say. And yeah, I did not know you were holding this Warping Whale. That changes a lot for me. So you swing in the Breaker, and I think, okay, I'm looking at this board. I've got 4 creatures. You can block 1. My hand right now is Fury and Violent Outburst. I could have Furied your Flesh Raker away, but I think, okay, if you just only block 1, and I cast this Violent Outburst, I'm getting in for exactly 9. But you have an instant speed way to make extra blockers.
Yep. Making 2, 1 from casting a colorless spell with Flesh Raker, and then just the 1 from the Warping Whale itself. So.
Yep. So you end up taking 4, and then I'm at 1 life and 15 cards in deck. So by the time you untap, you have the ability to empty my library. I think that's a really swingy matchup. I did pick up 1 set against you on it, but I think in general, it's going to be a losing matchup for Living End.
Yeah.
And I think at this point I'm playing to my outs. You forget to mill me. I can block with my Shardless Agent, and then I have lethal on the crackback, but of course you don't, so I scoop it up.
Yep.
And that's what gave you the trophy. So GG's, I think it was a great event.
Yeah.
23 people coming out. You did great. I did pretty good. Any closing thoughts on it?
No, I think if you're curious about the Value Vintage format, these weekly MTGO tournaments are a great place to come test out the format, your brewing skills. If you're like me, who's not as good at brewing and just likes to find a deck and try and perfect it, I think it's also a great place. The tournaments are free, and starting next month, we're going to have scaling rounds with player count. So instead of it being 3 rounds, it'll be closer to maybe like an MTGO league where we actually go 4 or 5 rounds.
Great practice to try different decks, to see what else is in the meta. Free entry. I'm going to obviously include to the Discord where those are hosted. I'm going to include a link to the Shardless Agent blog that we touched on, where you can see data, see other people's decks, track your ELO if you're grinding it like we are. Thank you very much for watching, and maybe you'll see us next week.